from days of yore. So let's see, this is my first time doing a YouTube live on the mobile, right, on my phone. Now, if the ring lights are too obnoxious, there's only one person here, or maybe it's a bot, or maybe it's my folks. I don't know. The chat is open, I don't know how it works, so here's the deal. It used to be, as far as I knew, that you needed to have 1,000 subscribers before you could go live on your phone, and I only today found out that you need 50, which, thank God, I do have. So let's see. Welcome to the chat. Remember to guard your privacy. Okay, so don't give out that personal information. So I'm doing this live for a couple of reasons. Robert and Paula Harrison of South Carolina. Is it South or North? I think it's South Carolina. Who are awesome. And I've had them, I think I did a live with them, if I'm not mistaken. I think I did a dialogue with them at the time. Or maybe it was just Robert. And they sent me lovely gifts, and I was just starting out. They asked for an update on what's going on, and Passover, and circumstances as they are. And I said, maybe not, I don't want to talk about the war. They said, no, you don't need to talk about the war. Hopefully I won't talk about the war, but you never know, it's happening. So, let's start with Passover. Passover, the seventh day, just yesterday, is the day when traditionally there was the crossing of the desert. Oh, wait, my water. I forgot it somewhere? Yes, I'll go get it. Be right back. All right. So the seventh day of Passover is traditionally when there was the parting of the Red Sea, the Reed Sea, Yam Suf. Afterwards, they arrive at a place with 12 pools of water and 70 dates, trees. The book Elima, the place is called Elim. The book Elima by Rav Moshe Cordovero is one which I own but have not started to read yet. But regardless, so Passover, leaving Egypt, going out from slavery into a different sort of slavery. I've mentioned this before, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, the poet, he said, what was he? 15th century or somewhere there, Renaissance time, Spain, something like that. He said that the slaves of time are slaves, but the slaves of Adonai, the slaves of God, they alone are free. We had a discussion during the night of the Seder, the first night of Passover. We had a discussion at the table here, a little bit, something short, nothing too bombastic or dramatic, on the nature of freedom, the nature of slavery, our own personal Egypts, and why we ought to be trying to break our bonds, be they ones that are set upon us or ones that we make for ourselves, always trying to break that limit. We are finite creatures, and we're always called to push our limits. There is, who was it, Aristotle? I don't remember, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but he said, whoever it was, one of those ancient Greeks, he said that forget it, I'm not going to butcher it too much. There's something to be said for being really human, knowing you're finite, and yet pushing for the infinite. Passover is that time when you leave one tyranny, one slavery, and some would say you go right into the other. We're not right into the other, right, at Mount Sinai. But Rabbi Yehuda Levi says that sentiment that the slave of Adonai alone is free, many people would see that as wicked and evil, oppressive, and all of the things associated with, well, that sort of deal. Personally, you know me, I don't tell anyone how to live. Personally, I've come through experience to know that to be a slave to Adonai is to set yourself free in a way which is infinite. You pushing yourself to bridge that gap between you being a finite being and that infinite divine revelation that's manifesting. Passover, you can believe that we were actually slaves in Egypt, or you can believe that we weren't, and it's all a bunch of hogwash and no archaeological evidence to back it up. Like I've said, either way about the Bible, it's the stories. Either way, it's the stories that have come down to us here. And Pesach specifically, of all the holidays and the Shabbases, it must be at night. It's not something which you can sanctify early, necessarily, and depending on the circumstances, I guess, but you're not meant to. It's supposed to be nighttime. Nighttime is associated with the left hand, with the narrowness, judgment. To break away from that on Passover, it's called a night of, what would be the translation? Leil Shimurim, a night where we are guarded and kept. And I can't help but think of the war when I just say that, but we're talking just about the conversation we had at the table. Passover. God, the divine revelation, passed over those houses of the Israelites who had the blood on the doorpost and who were eating the sacrifice inside, all ready to go with their staffs in their hands. There's this quality to Passover which also allows you to hop over certain things. It's a time when it's about liberty, it's about freedom, not necessarily from something, but the freedom to do something. That's not always the same thing. Or in other words, leave the tyranny of Egypt and the enslavement of Egypt and become, with a conscious and free mind of your own will, a servant, a slave of the Most High. Now, you can argue over what that means. It will mean being a servant of God, a slave of God would mean different things to different people, from the most negative to the most positive and everything in between. That's what the story of Passover is calling us to do. And I've said this before, on that seventh day, yesterday, the crossing of the sea, when God tells Moses, don't cry out to me, tell the Israelites to move, right? It's a time to move. And that idea of the divine revelation passing over the houses of the Israelites, and the idea of the ability, since we are in the image of God, humans, but Israelites right now for the sake of Passover, we're called to make the impossible possible. We're called to make a move. Now, this specific Passover was difficult for me for different reasons, the least of which being that the kids are off and we have a baby and life is challenging. Despite the challenges, this is something I hope that Passover is able to put imprint within me this year. That idea of, and let me make this very clear, it's not about creating shortcuts. It's not about rounding out corners. It's not about doing something which would otherwise be improper, not kosher. It's that idea of the covenant that stands, that merit of our forefathers that stands, and that allows us to continue that chain, to be part of that family, those tribes, these people, and mimic the divine in hopping over, passing over from slavery to freedom, making the impossible possible. The funny thing about making the impossible possible is that you're a person with free will. If you go with truth and honesty, sometimes you can surprise even yourself. And you create your own adventure as you go along. So the idea of being part of this people, of passing over, it's not about rounding corners. It's about making the impossible possible, meaning something you thought maybe you wouldn't do, being able to do it because you choose to, because you want to, because you are aiming towards it, setting aside the resources, putting a plan into action. Don't cry out to me, God tells Moses. Tell the people to move. You lift your staff, part the sea. It's on us. Oh, okay, so I have a few people here, and let's see the chat. Hey, Ariel. Wait, oh man, this is not going to be good. Wait, let's see if I can just raise this a little bit, and this will get a better view here. Nice to see you again. Nice to be seen. I'm happy to be here. So let's see, 3 people watching right now, which is nice. Hello, 3 people. I was supposed to meet Crispy Films the other night. He made Aliyah a couple of years ago, or was it 3 years ago? Something along those lines. And I think at the time he was living in Tzfat. I think he's still living up north, maybe not in Tzfat. And we were supposed to meet. Didn't happen. For the 3rd time, it didn't happen, but we will make it happen, and it will be a joyous occasion. It would be the 3rd time I meet somebody through this channel, which is lovely. Right, so I guess that's my little spiel on Passover very quickly. I rambled, I ranted. That's what I do here, going live, with all of the imperfections it may carry. I love doing it. So they wanted Passover circumstances and how I'm doing. Well, so I mentioned earlier, things are always a little challenging with a baby in the house. It's such a wonder to watch babies develop. Such a wonder. Each wonder, just to see their personality unfold, cultivate it and nurture it, and it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. And they keep me young. I'm still a child because of this. So yeah, even though things are challenging with a baby, I feel very, very blessed. Things are good. Wait, where's my water? Ah, there it is. Why do I keep misplacing my water? This time I didn't misplace it. I simply wasn't sure where it's at. That's not the same. Oh. So circumstances. Don't talk about the war. We don't talk about the war. We don't talk about the war. Hey. Circumstances are difficult. And I'm saying this as somebody who's doing this at 10 p.m. It's a lovely evening in Yerushalayim, right in Jerusalem. Oy. Okay, so let's talk more about Passover. Let's talk about the leavened and unleavened bread for a moment. The leavened bread, chametz, the bread which rises, that stays more than 18 minutes in some sort of liquid, be it water or fruit juice, or right, the grains that rise, the leavened bread, it symbolizes things like pride and things like. But what I want to say, and I've also mentioned this before, there were only a couple of specific times when you were allowed to bring chametz to the altar, to the temple. Each and every one, other than a couple, of the sacrifices that were grain and they were matzahs, the different things which were in oil and fried in a couple of ways and made into. Oh wait, we have something else in the chat. It is. You know what? This is not going to work. I'm sorry about that. Okay. You know what? My first time going live on mobile. You're going to have to deal with it. I'll have to deal with it. Okay. Hey, Oregon Freebird. I almost made it to Israel in October, but it was canceled for obvious reasons. Maybe next year. Good to see you. Thank you. Good to be seen. And I'm sorry you couldn't make it. Obvious reasons indeed. What a mess. Okay. Other circumstances with me. I recently passed 9. I'm into my 10th year writing for a living with this company that I'm working for as a copywriter. And it's, again, such a blessing. Not a lot of people get to write for a living. I don't take that for granted, not for a moment. Forgive the noises, motorcycles. If you even pick that up. It's something I don't take for granted. I, for years, worked in minimum wage, dead-end jobs. And I don't take this for granted. There's such a blessing, right? I was talking about making the impossible possible. This sort of thing facilitates it. Right? The idea of family and gainful employment. These are things which may seem trivial. Everybody, many people go through the same thing. It's what we do with the tools that we're given, right? The hand that we're dealt. How do we play it? And Passover is here to say, lower yourself. Lower yourself. Take that unleavened bread, that food of poverty, lechem oni, if that would be the correct translation. The idea of eating only the matzah, to remember, to be humble. I think it's that humility that eventually makes you able to part your own seas, to get out of your own personal Egypts. Humility is the key of all good traits, characteristics, character traits. I have a lot of trouble with it personally. Speaking of circumstances. But, Pesach is here. Pesach can also be translated as speaking mouth or talking mouth. Pe meaning mouth. Sach is to speak. The letters aren't the same, but the idea of telling the story of Passover is a big part of it. It's one of the mitzvahs of the night of eating the Passover sacrifice, the Passover lamb. Continuing that chain, being part of the people, means also telling the story. And in the Haggadah, in the ritual telling of the story, our sages wrote, in every generation, a person must see himself as if he has gone out of Egypt. It's a very famous line, and it's always true. These stories remain here for a reason. We tell them year after year, if not at the temple, then around the table, for a reason. If not in Jerusalem, other places. It continues. We don't put the blood on the posts of the door. That blood is now something that I'm in no way messianic in that sense. I, though, understand Christians and Messianics who see that as a sign of the blood of Yeshua. I don't personally. I can see that. I can see how it's something there that would greatly affect them. I just thought of that recently because I'm in touch with a Messianic Jew here in the neighborhood. So we speak occasionally. So making the impossible possible. Don't cry out to God. Tell the people to move. Make a move. That's how you make the impossible possible. You take a step. It may not manifest immediately, right? When Moses lifts his staff, the winds begin to blow. And they become more and more fierce, right? And that pillar of fire and the pillar of smoke and coming in between and everything that went on there, the 72-letter name of God, which is in the story of the parting of the sea. I mean, having that there, that has very deep meaning. I think that's my spiel on Passover part 2. I would talk more about my circumstances, but not feeling it any more right now than I've already shared. So I think I'm going to say goodbye. Wait, is there something else? Wait, no. Yes, okay, so about 20 minutes. First time going live on YouTube Mobile with all of its kinks and twists and rambles. I hope to be doing this a lot more. Now that I know that I can simply pick up my phone and I don't need 1,000 subscribers anymore, I plan on doing this a lot more, but time will tell. I'd love to. I'd like to. It's certainly a lot easier than setting up with a computer or a laptop for me. So, good night. See you soon, God willing.